Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Safety Soup Recipe for Success, Ingredients, Recognition, Communication, Engagement, Behaviorism, Branding, and Rewards. This event, brought to you by ISHN, is sponsored by All-Star Incentive Marketing. I'm your moderator, Maureen Brady, the Managing Editor of ISHN. Thanks for joining us. Today's presenter is Brian Galanick, President, All-Star Incentive Marketing. Mr. Galanick is one of only 35 certified professionals of incentive marketing and the former president of the Incentive Technology Council. All-Star Incentive Marketing is a 40-plus-year-old company, one of the nation's top suppliers of safety recognition and rewards programs, and a past winner of the IMA Circle of Excellence Award for Best Safety Incentive Program. Before we begin the presentation, I want to provide you with a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a taskbar. Each icon on the taskbar is assigned to a particular element of today's webinar. If you are unsure about what an icon does, hover over the icon with your mouse and a box will pop up that tells you the function. The certificate of completion for today's webinar is located in the handouts icon. Please take our survey following the webinar by clicking on the survey icon in the taskbar. Below the presenter photo, there is a blank questions box that allows you to type a question in the box and then hit the submit button to send it to us. Later in the live program, our presenter will address as many questions as possible. Today's event is being recorded and archived on www.ishn.com. All registered participants will receive an email within 1 to 2 business days that has a link to view a recording of this event. And now I'm excited to turn it over to today's presenter, Brian Galanick.
Thank you, Maureen. I really appreciate it, and thanks everybody for being here. Apparently we must have struck a chord because we do have hundreds of people registered for this webinar, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for the topics we're going to be addressing here today. Let's talk briefly about what we're going to learn during this presentation. We're going to discuss why engagement is the key to driving behavior change. Engagement, something you may not have heard very often in the past. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of recognition and rewards programs and how that relates to all the other topics and all the other ingredients. We're going to talk about why branding and communication are crucial for success, specifically relating again to the safety soup recipe for success. We're going to talk about and give you some research and statistics that support best practices, and we're going to give you some idea of where you can get additional information on all these topics. So we're going to jump in right away to our first ingredient in our soup here, and that being engagement. And for each ingredient, I'm going to give you at least a working definition of what it is we mean by that ingredient. And in this case, the word engagement refers to the extent to which employee commitment, both emotional and intellectual, exists relative to accomplishing the work, mission, and vision of an organization. Okay, put simply, how engaged an employee is in the company's overall initiative or goals. All right, a very simple graphic that kind of tells this story, or at least tells the story that relates to what we want to convey here is this. The role of engagement, there's a direct correlation between the level of an employee engagement and safety performance. If you improve employee engagement, you can improve safety. It's a very simple concept, but one that's not necessarily top of mind for most safety professionals, and one we're going to spend some time reviewing as we go through the presentation. We're going to go right to a poll question. I think Maureen mentioned that there's going to be several poll questions throughout the presentation. These are meant to give you, the audience, feedback and give you some idea of what it is the message we're trying to convey. The first poll question, hopefully you'll see it up here on your screen here in a moment, is what percentage of your workforce do you think demonstrates a strong commitment to your company? And Jamie, if they're not, oh, there we go, okay. So what percentage of your workforce do you think demonstrates a strong commitment to your company? This relates, again, to our first ingredient, engagement. You can see the choices here, 0 to 24%, 25 to 49%, 50 to 74, and 75 to 100%. I see a bunch of you already clicking on the results, so I appreciate that. We're going to just stall here for a few minutes, enough to get some enough results in to make it significant, statistically significant, and then we'll push those results right out the door to you and let you see for yourselves, for all of you who's on the phone, how many of you or what percentage of you think your employees fall into which of these categories. So as soon as it looks like we have enough here, it looks pretty good right there, we'll go ahead and push them out. So pretty typical. I've asked this question before in other webinars and topics with similar topics. We've got about 41%, the biggest category, that feel that 50 to 74% of their workforce demonstrates a strong commitment to their company, and then a pretty even match between 25 to 49 and 75 to 100%. So to my mind's eye, the winning number here is right around 70 to 75%. People on the phone, to be clear, think about 70 to 75% of their workforce demonstrates a strong commitment to their company. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to give you a piece of data here that's particularly telling. Um, According to a study conducted by Human Capital Institute, only 11% of today's workforce demonstrates a very strong commitment to their organization. So I didn't mean to set you up here, but and this is pretty typical. If I were asked the same question about my company, I'd probably also think that a majority, perhaps even a supermajority, demonstrated a strong commitment. But it really does depend on the level of engagement and a number of other factors. And all the data points to the fact that the reality is that far fewer people within any given company are highly engaged or strongly committed to that organization. And that lack of commitment and as it relates to engagement is particularly troubling as it relates to accomplishing safety goals. So let's talk about the power of engagement. By the way, on any one of these topics, any of the ingredients in the soup, if you want more information, you can certainly grab the presentation itself. Maureen's already made that clear. You'll get it via email shortly thereafter after the presentation's over within a couple of days. But if there's anything in particular you want more information on, there's every one of these topics is a study group into itself. And so when it comes to engagement, as an example, I'm going to hit you with a few high-level stats. The nature of this presentation, the 35 to 40 minutes I have to go through it, really requires me to kind of skim the surface. But I promise if this is the category that really interests you, I can give you tons of additional data after the presentation's over. Just drop me an email and say I'm really interested in learning more about the engagement portion or what have you. So 85% of employees see a link between their level of motivation and the quality and quantity of their work. 85%, obviously a substantial number. And disengaged employees cost the U.S. economy $416 billion annually. A nice pile of money we could certainly use these days. This data, by the way, is coming from Towers Perrin, Gallup, OHS, the Site Foundation, Human Capital Institute, a variety of different sources, but it all points to some obvious conclusions that a lack of engagement poses a real problem for U.S. companies, and as it relates to this presentation, poses a real problem for safety. Turnover, as an example, is 13% lower in organizations with high level of engagement. So if you have a high level of engagement and you have lower turnover, you clearly have an advantage when it comes to safety issues, because I think anybody on the phone that's been in their position for a while realizes that turnover itself can be a catalyst towards an increase in accidents and claims. You have people working shifts that they don't normally work. You have pressure on the workforce that remains behind, and you have new employees that are not as seasoned at the policies and procedures of being safe. They come on the job, and as a result, you end up with higher claims. So lowering turnover is very much an issue for safety as well. Here's one you can use when you go in the boardroom and talk to your boss or your boss's boss about why it is you want to do the various things you may want to do to improve safety. High engagement firms experience an earnings per share growth rate of 28% compared with an 11% decline for low engagement firms. So if you want to talk about the pocketbook here, we really do have the fact that engagement itself is an enormously important tool for growing our earnings per share. And earnings per share growth comes from a variety of different sources, but one of those sources is controlling cost. And one way in which, of course, we control cost is to minimize accidents, claims, and the workers' comp spending that goes along with it. And engaged employees are more productive, profitable, safer. They create stronger customer relationships, and they stay longer with the company. Again, all of this data pointing back to the fact that we want to have an engaged workforce. The connection to safety, and I've alluded to some of these things already, but here's just kind of a synopsis of that. It reinforces safe work behaviors. Okay, the better the engagement, the better the connection with your employees, the more likely you can reinforce those behaviors. And that comes through in suggestions or near-miss reporting, hazard identifications, if you will. Team meetings and VPP programs. These are all great engagement opportunities and ways in which companies can really reach out and connect with their employees. Engagement connection to safety also comes through as its ability to promote safety awareness at work, in the car or at home. And the out of the office or off the work environment is the final frontier, if you will, for safety professionals. I think we know that we want them safe at work, but we also want them safe at home. And it's important to try to get them to internalize what the message is in order to take that message with them when they leave the work site. And that's something that engagement programs can greatly help to do. Increased retention of safety-sensitive employees. We've talked about the benefit there. Enhanced working environment, well-being, team building, social reinforcement. Well-being is a really interesting one. We have the vast majority of U.S. companies now saying that they have wellness programs, and wellness programs are great engagement tools when they're done right. I have no doubt in my mind that many of the wellness programs that are out there are either understaffed or largely ignored, but those that are being done right are providing an opportunity for companies to engage their employees at a very high level and obviously have a win-win situation. We'll talk more about those benefits a little bit down the road. And engagement obviously is a great way to promote learning and reinforce training. Reinforce training. That's the key point there. Training is typically adequate in many companies, if not beyond adequate, but it's very often not retained very well. And part of that lack of retention comes from the fact that the person was not heavily engaged in what they were doing when they were receiving that training. So the results: reduced accidents and injuries, reduced safety-related costs, the results of improving the engagement level of your employees. Okay? Certain strategies for engagement, again, just kind of skimming the surface here, and I've touched on some of these. Training and development is a perfect opportunity to engage your workforce and engage them in a way that's meaningful. If you take an employee and stick them in a room in front of a PC and tell them to click on an icon and have them go through a training seminar and take a quiz at the end and come back and hand you a piece of paper to tell you how they did, you've missed an opportunity to engage them at a higher level. Okay, clearly that lacks from the employee standpoint or the participant potential employee standpoint. That lacks the kind of face-to-face interaction that would be more meaningful in that case. Safety team meetings, ad hoc meetings, tailgate meetings, pre-shift meetings. Again, these are great engagement opportunities, but if the supervisor shows up late, drinks his coffee, talks about the hockey game, begrudgingly hands out a piece of paper handed to them by the safety department about some new policy, doesn't go over it, and then they start their job, we've really lost an opportunity to engage that workforce. And there's no shortcut here. I mean, the heavy lifting is making sure that that supervisor is properly equipped to do the job they're supposed to do and that they execute, and if you have to, otherwise, obviously, making a move there to make sure that they do, because those team meetings are great opportunities to really engage. New employee orientation and mentoring programs, same thing. Don't stick them in a room and leave them alone if you can. It's highly suggested that we give them the kind of training that is more meaningful and more face-to-face. Suggestion programs, employee surveys, and I mentioned wellness programs as well. These are all great opportunities, strategies, if you will, for engagement. According to a Gallup study, 86% of engaged employees say they would characterize their interactions with coworkers as always positive, 86%. Okay, so when you go through the process of figuring out, using some very scientific methodology, who is engaged and who's not, and then you ask those engaged people about their interactions with coworkers, you've got a super majority here, almost 90% of those engaged workers who feel positive about those interactions. That type of positive attitude comes through in a great many ways, including improved safety. So that was ingredient number one. We're going to jump here to ingredient number two, and that's behavior. Defined here as the response of an individual or group to its environment. Very simple description, but one I think we all understand what behavior is. The real question is, how does it impact safety? Now, here again, this is college courses are taught on these subjects, and so in the time that we have today, what we're trying to do is give you sort of an overview of these 6 or 7 ingredients that all, when brought together, make for a really delicious soup. In the context of this presentation, all I can do is give you a couple of key thoughts and drop a few names of people you've probably heard of if you spent any time in the industry before as well, and then come to some conclusions about what behavior means or doesn't mean as it relates to what we're trying to convey here and how we're bringing this all together. So again, if you've been around at all, safety for any length of time, you've heard of Herbert Heinrich. Herbert Heinrich published back in the 1920s Industrial Accident Prevention. In that paper, in that book that he wrote, Heinrich had something called his law or his triangle, which was the 129-300, which basically said that for every one severe accident, there were 29 less severe accidents and 300 accidents that didn't produce an injury at all. Okay, and he went on to talk about an 88-10-2 rule, and again, without drilling too far down on that, it had a similar context to it, in this case relating to the fact that 88% of all accidents were behavior-based, 10% were created by the environment in which people were surrounded, and 2% were simply unpreventable under any circumstances. And another, probably the most cited percentage within the industry, because this has been around for 70 years now, is that 95% of all accidents are caused by unsafe behavior. I'm not here to agree or disagree specifically with Heinrich. I'm here to simply say that a huge foundation of behavior theory in this industry comes from his writings. More recently, and his writings put a lot of the blame or a lot of the responsibility for accidents on human behavior as the cause for a great many of the accidents that were caused in environmental injuries and accidents. Okay, when you get to more contemporary people writing on the subject, you got Fred Manuel, who still speaks on the subject, and actually produced a book called Heinrich Revisited, Truism or Myth. In that book, he talked about a great many things. He shot a lot of holes in what Heinrich had produced, and some of it, for legitimate reasons, such as the data was collected in the 1920s and our manufacturing, plants don't look anything like they did 80 or 90 years ago. And so that's very understandable. But he goes on to discuss not just his own thoughts, but also W. Edward Deming and Sidney Decker's thoughts on the environment in which people are surrounded, and talking at great length about the shortcomings in management systems and essentially the human error, as you look at Decker, is rooted in the system surrounding it. So you have two schools of thought here, and they overlap in the middle clearly, but you have one school of thought that says human behavior is the root of most of the accidents and injuries we see in industrial America, and you have another one that basically says the environment in which these people operate is the leading cause. The environment itself leads to the poor behavior, which leads to the accidents and injuries. From my perspective, in my 23 going on 24 years of doing this and looking at a great many companies and their safety programs, what I see is a chicken and the egg scenario. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer here. I think there is answers that are more right or more wrong depending on your specific company. But I think in the end, clearly the environment affects the behavior and the behavior affects the environment. And ultimately what we care about here in this presentation is how to affect both of those and which methodologies work the best. If we look at behavior and its intersection with motivation, if you will, the industry from which I initially sprung, you've got a 20-60-20 rule, and that's something you've probably seen a great many times. It's used in sales. It's used in a lot of applications, and it's largely true. In your company, it could be 10, 80, 30, or whatever the numbers might be. But essentially, what you have is the top 20% of your workforce is self-motivated. They're going to perform. They're driven by their own desires to succeed, and they're going to do a good job, and that includes in the area of safety. You've got 60% plus or minus in the middle that respond to stimuli. They can be driven to perform better if they're given the right type of input and motivation to do so. And you've got 20% at the bottom that probably should have been fired last week. They just simply can't be reached, and there's really no trick or behavior that we can go after that's going to reach that group. But the bottom line is that any of these scenarios, whether we're talking about safety or customer loyalty or sales, the biggest group by far is the group in the middle. And it's the group in the middle that we can have the greatest effect on if we design the right program. So when you look at intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, intrinsic people are driven more by their perceptions of success, and extrinsic people are driven more by their recognition and rewards. You've got a lot of the extrinsic type in that middle group, and the intrinsic group typically forms mostly the top portion of this. A recognition and rewards program wrapped around engagement and the other ingredients in this presentation can certainly help with that top group, but its biggest impact will be on that middle group. And it's that middle group that can give us the greatest level of success when we're trying to motivate behavior change. Okay? The quote on the bottom of this page is one that I love. I put it in every presentation. I'm not exactly sure why I love it so much. It just speaks to me. I think it's a paraphrase off of a Drucker quote, but your safety program is designed perfectly for the results you are getting. I've dealt with more safety professionals than I can remember over the years, and I've seen the good and the bad. And I've seen them very often shouting at the wind and with aggravation about the fact that they're applying what seemingly is a great set of ideas and changes and implementations and not necessarily getting the results that they're looking for, and they're frustrated with that, and there's a lot of blame to go around. But if you begin by understanding that what you're getting back, that your safety program and the safety environment as a whole is essentially a piece of machinery, and that piece of machinery is built with parts and is input and output, what you're getting out of that piece of machinery is exactly what you deserve, or exactly what you should get out of it based on the way it's built, which means if we need to do something different, we need to do something different to get different results. If we look at behavior-based safety a little further, we're just going to talk about the application, the science here behind some real-world problems. And again, just skimming the surface, what we really need if we're going to go after a BBS program is buy-in from all. And like any other, pretty substantial application within a business environment, we're not going to have the line-level employees wanting this and top management not wanting it. And if we do, it's not going to succeed. And conversely, if management says, "Oh, we love it, go implement that BBS program," we haven't got buy-in from our supervisors in the middle of the pack, it's not going to be successful. So we really do need to go after this in a way that people understand what we're trying to do, and it actually applies across the board to everybody in the organization. And it needs to be based on scientific data, dispassionate scientific data. When you go through a BBS program and you collect that data, it needs to be as untainted as possible. We just simply need to know what the facts are. Where are these accidents coming from? Or when we don't have accidents, what behavior is going on there as well? We need to study the good and the bad. It needs to be based on common goals. That really relates to the top point. Once we have common goals, once we all understand what's in it for us, we're in a much better position to get buy-in from top to bottom in an organization. And feedback and review are critical. Okay, if we go through this process and then take the byproduct and stick it in a drawer, what was the point to begin with? So we need to go through, when we go through this process, and get feedback and review and then alter and adjust the process going forward. The expectations for implementing a BBS program, small gains over and over again, or essentially continuous growth. This is not a quick fix. If you're thinking I want to launch a BBS program and see results in 6 weeks, you're obviously making a mistake. You're really looking at 18 months or even 2, 3, or 5 years is what you're looking for here. And it's not that you get to 5 years and all of a sudden all the gains come. It's just that when you get to 5 years and look back, you realize how far you've come over that period of time. It really is change over a long period of time. And the next bullet here, 5,000 repetitions to develop muscle memory, I openly admit that this reflects or relates to what we're talking about. So in other words, how many times you have to repeat a golf swing to get a good golf swing is different than how many times you have to repeat, practice the piano, or how many times you have to operate a piece of machinery before you're really good at it. But the bottom line is there is muscle memory. And muscle memory is an interesting term, but it really relates to the muscle between your ears and to a certain extent your strength and ability, flexibility and strength and what have you. But in the end, when you do something over and over and over again and you do it right, you reinforce that behavior. Okay, and you reinforce the right way of doing it. Conversely, if you do something over and over and over again and you do it in a risky way that just happens to have not caused an accident, you're reinforcing bad behavior that's likely to come back to bite you at some point. Okay, so we need to repeat over and over again. We need to support that. And how do we get a group of people to do something again and again and do it the right way? Typically, we do it by having them be as highly engaged as possible and then motivating them, and as we discussed here a little bit later on, possibly rewarding them as well. And the environment, the equipment, the procedures, and the attitudes all have a major effect on what we get out of BBS as well, and they must be considered. Again, this is a cursory overview. All you need to do is go do a Wikipedia search or buy any one of the books on the topic, and you'll get some good tips on how to run a BBS program internally. But just to give you some idea of what matters for the context of this presentation, you wouldn't want to do it and ignore the equipment, the environment, or the attitudes of your employees when doing so. So some strategies for positive behavior. Going about this, again, real quick summary of what you might want to do. Observations and worker feedback, right? Now, it's not concealed. If we're going to go out there and study the workforce, we're going to study their environment, we're not going to do so with a hidden camera or with binoculars from across town. We're going to basically tell them up front, here's what we want to do, guys. We want to go out, we need to study behavior, and we want to see the good and the bad and just see what's going on. And you want to observe both safe and unsafe behavior. It's not a question of just the aha, gotcha moment. It's very much a part of looking at what they're doing right and feeding off of that as well. And as a result of that, you're going to want to complement their safe work practices, right? So again, we're not strictly there. This is not punitive, as it says down a little bit further, and it's not strictly there to nail somebody. In fact, it's not there to nail somebody at all. What we really want to do is find out what they're doing right and find out what they're doing wrong, complement what they're doing right, and then specifically point out what they're doing wrong, and then ask them why. And that's probably the most important piece of this by far. Why is it that you did what you did? John, I see you come to the work site 9 out of 10 days. I see you go get a harness and tie off properly. 1 out of 10 days, for whatever reason, I see you go up that step ladder and not tie off. Why is that? And the answer will maybe obvious or maybe not so obvious. Could have something to do with speed, productivity. It could have something to do with being distracted. Could have something to do with, when he only goes up 4 stairs, he doesn't think he needs to tie off, and when he goes up 6 or more, he decides he has to. But whatever that answer is, it's revealing. And the only way you're going to get it is by, again, being upfront with what we're observing, complementing that good behavior, and then gathering all data, good or bad. And then, quite frankly, I wouldn't put John's name on the top of the page. We're not trying to have a moment where we nail him. And so he needs to understand that we're just gathering data and it's not specific to him. And as it says below, it's not punitive, and that the reports themselves are reviewed by a steering committee and reaction is taken. That part is obviously critical. I've seen plenty of companies that do a pretty good job gathering data, but they don't all necessarily react to it properly or even use the data going forward, which is remarkable, but it does happen. Here's another quote that I love. Don't know where it came from. It's been used in every context, but here again, it relates perfectly to what we're talking about here. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is by definition insanity. So if, as I go through this presentation and you think to yourself, well, we tried that before, but not this one. Well, we tried that before, but we didn't necessarily finish it off. Or we've never tried this before. If I were you, I would strongly suggest if your safety number has been plus or minus stuck in a place where you don't want it to be, or for that matter, going in the wrong direction, it really is time to think outside the box and try to come up with a different approach, because going back and just trying to do it again is likely to produce the same results and probably drive you insane in the process. So that was another ingredient, obviously behavior. And we're going to jump now, and these are going to come a little bit quicker, but we're going to jump now to a couple of the other ingredients. The next one being branding. And if I hadn't told you anything about this presentation other than the fact that there were ingredients, and if I told you initially one was engagement and one's behavior, and I asked you to guess at one of the next one, I doubt many of you would have guessed branding unless you've taken in a previous presentation of mine, but it's critical. It's absolutely crucial. The definition here is the process involved in creating a unique name or image. The aim is to establish a significant and different presence in the mind of others. A significant and different presence. In this case, a significant and different presence about your safety brand. Before I go on any further about that, let me just ask real quickly, has your company created, another quick poll question here, has it created a custom or unique brand name for your safety program? Okay, so if your safety program is called Our Safety Program, the answer is no. If your safety program has no name and has never been branded, the answer is no. If you've created some sort of a real custom brand name on it that you're communicating, then the answer would be yes. And I can see the answers pouring in here real quick. We'll just drag my feet for another few seconds and I'll push them to you. But again, it has to be a specific brand name created for your safety program, communicated by your company. 71%. And again, I've got a lot of people on the phone here right now, so there's a lot of data backing this. 71% of you on the phone have not put a brand name on your safety program. I would tell you right now, that's the low-hanging fruit from this call. We'll talk a little bit about, to the extent that I have time, what to do first, second, or third here. There's a lot of information I'm throwing at you, and one thing I don't want you to do is feel overwhelmed, because it's not that you would start. If you're not doing any of these things, it's not like I would say to you, you have to go start them all tomorrow. It's too much, too fast. But one of the first places I would start is to put a brand name on my program. Okay, and don't do it, don't do it on a cocktail napkin, and don't do it on your own. Get a committee together, get some good ideas, and come up with a good slogan and brand name that captures your company's safety program or your commitment to safety with something that's forward-leaning as well. Okay, maybe you haven't been the safest company in the world, but your objective is to make it safer going forward. I would tell you that the vast majority of you on the phone that don't have that now, that would be a great first step. Okay, and then we're going to use that safety name, if you will, in a way that's going to help promote safety throughout the organization. This is a little drill down on branding, and it's specifically a drill down on customer loyalty. And if I were you, I'd be wondering what customer loyalty has to do with safety, and hopefully I'll close that loop here for you in a second. There are 2.1 billion loyalty program members in the United States. Needless to say, there aren't that many U.S. citizens. So the U.S. citizens in this country tend to be in a lot of programs. In fact, I think the average household is in about 18 loyalty programs these days, and it's growing constantly. Companies don't spend money on customer loyalty if it doesn't work. And they spend more and more money every single year on customer loyalty because it does work. And they spend more and more money on branding every single year as well. Customer loyalty, successful products have a strong brand identity, and they create the loyalty themselves. And well over 90% of all products sold carry a brand name. Honestly, I try to look up the real number. I know I had seen at one point. I don't know what it is, but all you need to know is if you walk down a grocery store aisle, every once in a while you might see a bag of chips that's white with black letters on it, but right next to that are 47 other brands of chips that don't, that have a brand name on it. In the soup aisle, for every can, I don't think there's a such thing as a generic name of a brand soup, and if there is, it probably still carries the brand name of the store that's selling it. I don't think I've ever heard of a generic car, TV, or any other consumer product to speak of, right? So when you go out to buy something personally, you have loyalties, and it doesn't just relate to tangible goods. It relates to getting your taxes done. Topical moment right now, and using a specific brand name, perhaps an accounting company. It relates to any number of other things where you would specifically seek out a brand name. And the point here is simply this: if brand matters, and if brand makes things memorable, and if promoting a brand name is so important that companies spend, this says billions, it's probably hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars worldwide promoting their brand, why would your safety program be any different? If your company, whatever you make, is out there putting tons of money into the marketing, the branding and marketing of its product in order to make it top of mind for consumers, in order to make it stick and make that message resonate in order to actually generate sales, why wouldn't it still matter? Why wouldn't it matter equally as much in your world as well of safety? And the answer is it does. And this is a place where this is outside of the box thinking for a lot of safety professionals. I need to decide what my safety objectives are, create a brand around it, and promote it incessantly to the benefit of all. And that's really what this slide is meant to convey here. Those logos you see on the right-hand side, those are memorable for anybody using them, whether it's Sky Miles, whether it's Marriott Rewards or your credit card rewards program. You know what they are the minute you see it, and you need your safety program to induce that same type of recognition value when anybody in the company sees it as well. Okay? And last point on there, incentive programs, the recognition rewards programs are widely used to generate that brand identity and to convey it. And we'll touch on that a little further in a minute. So that was branding. Its cousin is communication. Communication, simply defined as a process by which information is exchanged between individuals, in this case individuals or company and individual. From a communication standpoint, it would do us no good to create a brand and not tell anybody about it, or for that matter, to create any element of our safety program and not tell anybody about it. So when we talk about communication, there's any number of different ways, particularly in this world, to communicate what it is we've developed, right? So there's interactive, there's web, there's email, there's mobile, which is fastly growing. I mean, mobile devices are both the bane of society from a safety standpoint, as it relates to texting and driving and what have you. They're also a wonderful way to get messaging out there. So there's good and bad and a great many things. And then there's older school, whether it's videos or on or offline surveys or quizzes. There's all kinds of different print elements, posters, catalogs, flyers. The graphics that go along with these things are enormously important. Obviously, you want to have some consistency with the logos and vision statement. And there's content. Content that would be included on a website that relates to your safety program and maybe your recognition and rewards program, right? And in that content can be anything from news stories and welcome messages, rules and regulations, all the things that really help drive the process, including testimonials. I had one client that when we first put up a program for them, we got an unsolicited testimonial that was just fantastic. And we hadn't even thought to ask for these things. And this person who was driving home and had just gone through safe driver training. And he was off the job. He was just driving home from work, and he was at a red light. And when the light turned green, he was about to hit the gas and go, as he would normally, as you and I would normally. And in the driver safety training he had just received, it said, when the light turns green, take a quick look left and right before you decide to go across that intersection. He did so. He saw a car barreling through the intersection at 50 miles an hour. He hit the brakes, stopped short, didn't get hit by the car coming across the intersection. That car had a drunk driver in it who crashed into the guardrail on the other side. And he's pretty confident, based on what he wrote, that he absolutely would have been dead had he continued along across that intersection. That testimonial was sent to us unsolicited by this worker who worked for the company, who just said, "I'm very thankful for that Focus 6, that safety recognition program that you put out the door. I think it may have saved my life today." Well, needless to say, with his permission, we put that testimonial up on the website, and it was one of the most clicked on items on the web solution. And of course, we can tell where they go and what they look at. And we had a huge majority of employees click on that and read that testimonial, and you can imagine the way that thing sank in. And so, needless to say, it led in credence to the idea that we may want to solicit some additional testimonials going forward. And of course, we have. And they're great, powerful tools to help convey, what it is we're all trying to accomplish, which is a safer workforce. Logo merchandise is another great one. This relates directly to brand as well. When you put your logo, your company's logo and the brand name logo, let's say from your safety program, on T-shirts and hats and any other type of item that you give away to your workforce for being safe on the job, or maybe it's something they can redeem for with the points they've earned, and then you walk around the job site, construction, the plant, what have you, and you see your logo on T-shirts and hats, or the name of the safety program on T-shirts and hats, you talk about a win-win-win. I mean, the employee got an award for being safe on the job, and you're promoting the brand name of the program itself, which only further goes to reinforce everything we're trying to accomplish with the program. So they're great tools for safety, safety improvement as well. And then the interactions, and I've talked about this, instant recognition, face-to-face, meetings, on-the-spot awards, all those things that we talked about under engagement are really also part of the communication strategy. Don't waste an opportunity to have a meaningful conversation with an employee. Use those opportunities to actually communicate the message as well. Okay, so the results, branding and communication, we have recognition of a safety brand, greater recognition company-wide of the safety brand we've created. I have programs right now for companies with tens of thousands of employees We've done surveys and found out 95% of everybody in that company knew what the brand name of the safety program was. Okay, that right there tells you that we've made some headway, and we're far more likely to be successful with any initiative that we layer on top of that. Understanding of shared goals. Again, goals aren't to be developed in a boardroom and kept under lock and key. They're to be shared and get buy-in from every member of the team. Improved team environment. Again, a result of branding and communications. We have an improved environment in the team and company-wide commitment to safety. Okay, there needs to be some meat behind that message. If it's just a safety brand with nothing behind it, we're not going to get very far. But having a good safety brand with a strong message behind it is enormously powerful for what we're trying to accomplish. Our next ingredient is recognition. I've, again, used it conversationally throughout this presentation. I'll continue to do so. The act of formally acknowledging achievement. We know what recognition is. And you know it when you do it, and you certainly know it if you've ever been recognized by somebody else in your company. If somebody says you've done a great job, that tends to resonate, whether it's just the words or a presentation itself of some sort, or certificate, an email. When somebody tells you they really appreciate the hard work and you've done a great job, that recognition goes a long way. That's a very important part of anything we do here, a very important ingredient in the soup, and it really needs to be there. And if you take a good, hard, honest look at what your workforce is doing or being trained to do, if there isn't a strong recognition component in there, there again is a piece of the puzzle that's missing, and it can be systematically chipped away at over a period of time. Properly designed recognition and rewards programs do several things. Again, if you want more information on the importance of recognition, just ask for it after the fact. But at a cursory review, let's just talk about the fact that it adds emphasis to all elements of your safety program. Okay, so whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, you want more first responders, you want more certified CPR, workers, you want more people to attend the safety meetings, you want more people to understand what it was they were trained on or pass a quiz on these types of things. Recognizing them for doing the right things that relate to those initiatives is one of the most powerful things you can do. You want to optimize your engagement strategy as well. Again, recognition of people who are doing things that feed the engagement strategy is most important. So when you have an employee who stays late after the job and takes the new employee under his wing and spends extra time with them, really engaging that employee, that's a great behavior that you're going to want to recognize. They motivate proactive, safe behavior. Again, if I thank you, and let alone if I thank you and reward you at the same time, but if I thank you and or reward you for making a great safety suggestion, you're more likely to make another safety suggestion, which obviously benefits us down the road. It elevates employee communications. Again, it makes everybody more willing to talk up the initiative themselves, and it ties initiatives together, like safety and wellness. And I mentioned wellness before, but it's very much a safety issue as well. Okay, wellness is a wellness issue, but wellness as an engagement and a safety issue as well. And they improve employee engagement at all levels. Okay, again, the recognition does that for you. So recognition and incentives, here again, a small sample of statistics relating to a very large topic. What is it that we do when we recognize and reward somebody? 84.7% of respondents said that their company's safety consciousness increased as a result of their safety incentive program. Again, we've got Gallup, we've got a number of great organizations here producing this data. So almost 85% flat out telling you that their consciousness, their awareness increased as a result of being part of a safety incentive, a rewards program. Incentive programs aimed at individuals increased performance by 27%. I don't think there's anybody on the phone that wouldn't love to get, some small fraction of a 27% improvement in their overall performance. Long-term incentive programs are more than twice as powerful than short-term programs, 44% versus 20. I think we know that safety is 24/7, 365. You wouldn't launch any of these things that we're talking about here. You wouldn't launch them and say, let's give that a shot for 6 weeks and see how it goes. Well, you can certainly see how it goes, but once you see how it goes, you have to stick with it. Safety is really an around-the-clock objective, and the fact is the longer you have these initiatives out there, the more powerful they are. 92% of corporations reported that their objectives were surpassed, met, or at least partially met through the use of incentive programs, an overwhelming number saying that these types of strategies produce results. And then jumping very quickly into our last ingredient, that's the rewards ingredient. And again, you've seen it already stirring around in the soup. A reward is something that's given to a person for the return of something. In this case, of course, it's an actual reward for behavior that leads to a safer environment. And when we talk about rewards, I want to bring it back, if I can, quickly to brand. I talked about brand and the importance of branding your safety program. And now up there on the screen, you see a great many brand names, most of which I'm sure you recognize, and there's a host of others. When you reward somebody for safe behavior, when you reward them for engaging behavior, when you reward them for being active participants, um, you want to do so in a way that allows them to redeem for the awards of their choice. One thing we know for a fact is we don't want to use cash. We want to use a brand name award. I'll come back to that in a minute. But giving them an actual tangible physical item that carries a brand name that they recognize and respect is going to be by far the best way of rewarding that individual on top of the recognition that made it powerful to begin with. So bringing it together here real quickly in terms of a strategy for recognition and rewards programs, just some real clear to-dos. When we're going to put one of these programs out the door, we need to clearly establish the goals and performance expectations. Okay, what is it we're trying to get at? All right, you don't have to do everything I'm talking about in one fell swoop, and undoubtedly some of you, many of the companies that are represented on the phone today have some of these elements already in place. Maybe they need to be patched up a little bit, maybe they need to be upgraded, or maybe they're perfectly fine. And then in other cases you may have a recognition rewards program, but you may not really have an engagement element. Okay, or you haven't factored in behavior-based elements of that program as well. So it really is establishing the goals. What is it I want to do next? What are we doing now? What do we want to do next? And getting buy-in from top to bottom in the organization. Put a brand name on the program. I think I've beat that one up pretty good, but it's clearly something you need to do. And provide ongoing communications to make sure that that brand name is well understood and recognized for all eternity. Face-to-face recognition. I talked about recognition. Ideally, whenever possible, that recognition is going to be face-to-face. It's certainly far better to meet somebody, say hi, say thank you, and tell them what they've done that you appreciate. That's far better than pushing an email to them saying, hey, I heard you did a good job, thanks. Not that the email isn't partially powerful, but face-to-face recognition and the use of a tangible award mechanism is the best way to go. So if you are going to have a rewards program, and that rewards program is going to be points-based, ideally you wouldn't just say to somebody, oh, hey, Bob, I gave you 50 points today. You would say in a meaningful way, perhaps in a pre-shift meeting, you would thank Bob for his efforts and hand him some sort of a tangible vehicle to convey that he earned 50 points for becoming an early responder, or he earned 50 points because of observation showed his exceedingly safe behavior on the work site. That type of recognition on the spot rewarding face-to-face tangible point voucher makes things extremely more powerful. One thing we don't want to do, because we don't want to tick off OSHA or Dr. Michaels, and for those of you who know what I'm talking about, there is some pushback from OSHA, at least there has been over the years, regarding the use of incentive programs. Dr. Michaels in his article and his comments have been very specific about what they don't like about incentive programs. They've also been very specific about what they do like about incentive programs. And what they do like, and for good reason, I'll applaud them on this, is they like when these programs reward for proactive behavior. And I would throw in there as well, what they should really like is when it rewards for individual behavior. If you have a safety incentive program, and this is the one that our fathers and grandfathers have used forever, that is rewarding the entire group for group behavior, again, I would tell you you're making one or two or three of the most fundamental mistakes that the industry has. In fact, I would tell you flat out that board out in front of the building that says 400 days accident-free is also very risky in that regard. Okay, because what it does is it takes a very large workforce very often, it lumps them all together, and it makes everybody responsible for everybody else's action. And I think even though that there's some element of that says, well, that makes sense, like a football team, we want to punish the guy that does bad. Everybody on the team has to run a lap when this guy doesn't try hard. In a work environment, it can backfire on you. OSHA doesn't like it, and quite frankly, it doesn't produce the results you're looking for. What you really want to do, you really want to reward individuals for individual behavior, and you want to either completely avoid the group behavior reward or minimize it. So your individual behavior is what will get you recognized and rewarded on the job, and you, John, and you, Jane, will get rewarded specifically for what you've done, and you will not be punished for what Bob does wrong. But if you're going to have any kind of a group element in there at all, it should be very small and perhaps not even announced. So it really is just a thank you gift after the fact. So our goal was to reduce our claims by 10%. Along the way, I rewarded individuals for their individual behavior, and I rewarded them for going above and beyond, making safety suggestions and joining committees and what have you. And at the end of the year, when I actually got a 12% drop in claims, without even telling anybody it was coming, I went out and I gave everybody in the team 25 bonus points, okay, as a thank you. But what I didn't say is, and these are the other two elements of a poorly designed program, what I don't want to say is, okay, everybody in the second shift, all 400 of you, If all 400 of you are safe this month, I'm going to throw all 400 of your names into a hat, and I'm going to pull one winner out of the hat, and that guy's going to win a pickup truck. This is shattering the 3 or 4 most fundamental mistakes when it comes to making a program. The only thing that would make it any worse is if the reward was $10,000 in cash. You don't want to do that. It really does give somebody the impetus to hide an accident or injury. Somebody would not hide an accident or injury just because they were afraid of, they weren't going to get their own 20 points that month. But if they think that they're going to cost all 400 people on their shift their ability to win something or earn their points or win a pickup truck, they might hide an accident or injury. And that's the main reason why we don't want to do it. And we don't want to give away a pickup truck because if you got a 1 in 400 chance of winning a pickup truck, you never think you're going to win it. If you do, you're surprised, and if you don't win it, and almost everybody won't, it'll just reinforce the fact that it wasn't a good prize to begin with. All right, so using exceedingly high value awards is a bad idea. Using the element of chance where we pick a name out of a hat is a very bad idea. Using cash is just a poor motivator with no memory value. You've probably heard a lot on that subject. And if you want more, ask me. I'll be happy to push you great research on that as well. And then, the last thing I would just throw in there is you want to reward everybody equally. You don't want to have a program that's slanted so heavily in one direction or the other that it looks like it's unfair for all participants. Okay. In the webinars I've delivered, and I've delivered many, I've asked the same question over and over again, and I think the results is primarily for your benefit. I think the results are fairly interesting to look at. And the question is simply this: how is your safety budget likely to change over the next 12 months? Is it going to stay the same? Is it going to decrease slightly or decrease substantially? Or do you think it's going to increase slightly or increase substantially? And same thing here. I can see the answers rolling in, and we're just going to give it a few minutes or a few seconds to try to get enough in the door to give everybody a good view. And after I give you the results of what those on the call say, I will show you the results of last year and the year before that. And perhaps you can draw some conclusions as to how the safety budgets, yours versus others around you, are changing around the country, and what that might reflect as it relates to the economy and people's desires to improve safety in their company, or if they see safety as a challenge that needs to be spent on. Okay, let's go ahead and push that out. So 64% stay the same. I can tell you when we go to the next page, and we'll do it in a minute, that is a higher number than most I've seen in the past. So we've got a lot of status quo, I guess, is out there. However, encouragingly, I guess you'd say, you have 24% saying that it's going to increase and only 12% saying it's going to decrease. I'm lumping together the slightly and substantially. So you've got twice as many people saying that it would, for those that aren't on the fence and saying it's going to stay the same, you've got twice as many that are saying it's going to increase than are saying it's going to decrease. If we take a look at numbers from 2011 and 2010, you'll see that in 2011 we had 42% saying it was going to stay the same. That's the piece of the pie in red. And in 2010 we had 53% saying it was going to stay the same. So again, this is at 64%. We've got a higher quantity saying it's going to stay the same. Because that quantity is higher, you've got a lower percentage across the board on the increase or decrease side. But again, I think the pretty strong message here is that the budget decline color is blue. So if you look at budget decline versus budget increase, last year you had 25% people that weren't saying it was going to stay the same. You had 25% saying it was going to go down, and 33% saying it was going to go up. It's better this year in that twice as many, 24% think it might be going up relative to 12% saying it's going down. Somewhat of an interesting sign, probably reflective of the environment we're in and whether or not we're actually coming out of this pretty troubling times that we've been in for the past several years. Okay, real quickly, and I'm not going to stay. Don't try scribbling this down. I don't even know how well you can see the blue against the black, but everybody's going to get a copy of the presentation, and it'll have information about all the resources. So there's a couple pages here with links and resources to a lot of the data, and obviously information about how to contact me as well. And so that'll all be in what you receive after the fact, and ask me if you want more, because there's plenty more. And without further delay, Maureen, I'll hand it back to you, and we can handle a little Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for a great presentation. And now we'll have Brian address some questions that have been submitted throughout the program. The first question is, unions seem to be adverse to all the powers of engagement, especially quantity of work and commitment to company.
Yeah, so it's more of a statement than a
question? More of a statement than a question, yeah.
At times, absolutely. I have spent a great amount of time over my career promoting safety and the recognition and rewards and engagement programs that I talked about here. And I have to say, depending on the environment, I fully agree. There are times where unions are, I'm sorry if this doesn't resonate well or doesn't sit well with some people on the phone. There are times where the unions are irrational in the extreme, and when I say that, they have objectives and they're single-minded about those objectives, and then when you have something that should be a win-win for both them and the company, it doesn't necessarily come through. The one thing I would say is this: ultimately, when you get the audience, when you get enough of an audience that can listen to what it is you have to say, okay, whether it's coming from me or management, and you understand that, no, this is not management trying to blow one by you, and it's not that old school thinking that said, oh, an incentive program is just a way of convincing me to work harder, take more risks, and not report accidents. That those criticisms were probably well levied against the older programs that were, quite frankly, built improperly. But there's no arguing against the fact that if I simply recognize and reward you for your behavior, and if I do so by engaging you further while putting a brand name on a program and promoting it, that I can do so in a way that, yes, is going to reduce claims, yes, is going to reduce spending for the company, but most importantly is going to stave off accidents and injuries and truly be a win-win for all. We deployed a program, just to pick one real quickly, in a company that's about one-third union and two-thirds non-union, okay? The program, when it was first put out the door, was deployed over a period of about 12 months and almost exclusively in the non-union areas of this company. This company has hundreds of divisions, and not in the union divisions. And the reason was we were told that in order to deploy that program in the union divisions, each individual union contract was going to have to be renegotiated, and quite frankly, the unions may be looking for something in return for agreeing to deploy this program, okay? Seems a little counterintuitive, right? Because this program was meant to benefit their workers and would do so and did so in a fantastic way. Anyway, long story short, the program was out the door almost completely in all the non-union areas, and one by one, the union areas, particularly the larger ones, came knocking once they saw what the program was and started asking for it. And frankly, it turned into a bargaining chip on the other side for management, who, to their credit, didn't really use it to squeeze. They just said, no, we'd be happy to put this program in place out there as well. And that program recognized and rewarded people for everything we're talking about now, for safe behavior and for proactive behavior. And it did so, not only did it reward people in a way that let them pick their prizes from brand name awards, it also grossed up their pay to cover any taxable implications that the giving the points might have had. So I don't know, it's been possible to look at that in a way. And by the way, the claims in this program is now in its 7th year, and the claims have dropped more than 10% every year for 7 consecutive years. And this company is the safest company in their industry now. So I don't know how it could be anything but observed, but other than a win-win-win.
Okay, the next question is, what do you think about allowing employee teams to determine what safety rewards should be used?
I love it. I love it. I think, you want to form teams and not, employees and combinations of employees and supervisors and managers. I think it's an awesome idea. And not just which reward should be used, because quite frankly, the most important reward is the one that the person wants. And so I would tell you that, when I was younger and started doing what I'm doing now, we spent a lot of time talking about which reward we wanted to offer in the program. Well, now today's incentive and recognition solutions, at least the one that I offer, we can offer for just about anything under the sun as a reward, and we do, and we should. Because quite frankly, if the guy redeeming or the woman redeeming really wants a blender or a fishing pole or a power tool, if that's what they really want, or concert tickets or an airline flight, they should be able to get so. So I wouldn't spend a long time wondering about the rewards themselves. I would partner with somebody who can give you all of the great rewards that make people really compelled to try harder. But forming teams of employees to help make the rules of the program and to discuss the objectives of the program and the implementation process, and all the way down to the communication elements, whether it's posters or flyers or graphics or what's going to be on the website, or whether we want to solicit testimonials, or whether we should do a kids coloring contest. I've done those many times. They're fantastic. Kids coloring contest is part of a program where children, you can just download a black and white line drawing of mom or dad on the job and color the picture and mail it in, and get points and receive awards. And then we put those pictures all over the website. You talk about feel-good stories that makes everybody, that gives everybody a reason to come to the site. It makes them feel good about the initiative. Those are the types of things that committees of employees, those are the types of ideas they come up with and that they can execute that really enhance a program.
Okay. How do you discourage claims that the supervisors are not consistent or fair to all employees? An example, I always follow rules, but so-and-so doesn't, but never gets caught.
Yeah, it's the old playground thing, and it happens, right? It doesn't make a difference how old we get. We see that over and over again, right? Why does he get away with it when I can't? I would tell you this. I would put the supervisors in the program. I like rewarding every link in the chain. I would put the supervisors in the program, and I would reward them for doing it the right way, and I would stop rewarding them for doing it the wrong way. And I would use a similar level of methodology of encouraging, the right behavior as a way of discouraging the wrong behavior. And the truth is, and again, in today's recognition rewards programs, which are typically managed online, they can be deployed online and offline, but they're managed online. If you have a supervisor who's giving all of his points or a disproportionate number of points to one employee, misusing the program, you run a simple report and it's going to jump right off the page. And, somebody's going to have some explaining to do when they walk into a room and find out that for whatever reason, 8 out of 10 times he gives out points, he gives them to the same person over and over again, or in some way, disproportionately uses the program in a way it wasn't intended. That won't last very long, and it'll be very easy to catch.
Okay. What kind of results can be expected from using these solutions?
Well, very often 4 to 1. There's no, I can't say with confidence without knowing whether or not I'm talking. There's a lot of companies on the phone here, right? So I don't know if you're in trucking. I don't know if you're in, in poultry. I have no idea who's on the phone, and certainly there's differences from industry to industry. A general rule of thumb in the industry when you take a broad range of programs and look at the numbers is you can expect a 4 to 1 return on investment. And that's very often on hard cost spending. Soft cost spending can go substantially higher. You just have to buy into them. You have to buy into the fact that there's an additional savings for people as it relates to not having to find, hire, and train more workers because your employee retention has gone up as a result of the program. To give you one other crazy example, it's not that crazy, but one other example that's a little further off beat, we have a company whose safety has improved so dramatically using recognition rewards programs with us over a period of years that they are the safest company in their industry, and they can prove it. And when they go into a sales pitch, and it's a commodity type product, so when they go into a sales pitch, and there's a company that has to drive trucks onto the property of their customers, okay? And so when they go into a sales pitch and they start talking to customers, and their pricing is plus or minus the exact same as their major competitors' pricing, and they're all the way through the pitch, and when they get to the end of the pitch, they say, okay, so essentially we're in a dead heat with these other two competitors, but here's the other thing. We're the safest company in our industry. We have 10%, 20%, 30% fewer claims than our next two biggest competitors, which means we're far less likely to get in an accident anywhere, including on your property, and there's a benefit to that. So again, you want to talk about 4 to 1 is possibly the hard cost savings, as a very likely number. When you talk about soft cost savings or incremental revenue generated as a result of this, the numbers can be substantially higher. And it's really important to make sure that the national sales manager understands the nature of the beast here, and that human resources, that people besides the safety manager understand where the benefits are coming from, because quite frankly, you probably need buy-in from those other departments to really make this thing sing.
Okay. And how do you combat the tendency to hide small injuries and near misses in order to attain a reward?
Yeah, what I said earlier, don't reward the entire group for group behavior. Okay, that's the main thing. But if I give you 4 things, don't reward an entire group for group behavior. Okay, I won't. Workers will not hide an injury. Let's say that I'm giving somebody 20 points every month for being safe on the job. Okay, I won't hide if I go out and put a dent in the forklift, if I go out and drop a piece of equipment, if I go out there and sprain my ankle, I'm not going to hide that and pretend that just because I'm worried about my 20 points. Okay, what I will do is if you say to me, again, you're partnered together with all 500 people in your plant, and anybody who gets an accident, everybody in the plant doesn't get their 20 points this month, that's when I don't want to be the bad guy. And I might put a dent in a piece of machinery and then on the 29th of a month and not report it because I don't want to cost everybody their points. And so don't reward the group for group behavior. And the other caveats to that, and they're all intertwined, are don't use really high-ticket awards. Don't use the element of chance, right? There was a trucking company out there a few years ago. They were all proud of themselves for doing this thing called Thanks a Million, where they picked one name of one trucker out of a hat and gave that person $1 million. Can you imagine? One of their own employees. And they spent $1 million on one employee who probably quit the day after he got the $1 million. And the thousands of other drivers didn't get a reward at all. And if you had your name thrown in a hat as a chance to win that, first of all, you never thought you were going to win it anyway, so there was no power to the motivation. Second of all, it was punitive. So if you had a violation that wasn't even your fault, your name was taken out. It's just a bad idea. So skip the element of chance. don't use exceedingly high value awards. Don't use cash, okay? Use a points-driven, largely proactive behavior-driven rewards program and reward individuals for individual behavior only, and you will not have people hiding accidents. I haven't seen it at all in my 23-year career.
Okay. Well, looks like we're out of time, so this concludes today's webinar. So please join me in thanking Brian Galonick for his presentation, as well as our sponsor, All-Star Incentive Marketing. As you exit today's webinar, please take a couple minutes to complete our survey. We strongly welcome your detailed comments to help us serve you better. If you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to contact me at bradym@bnpmedia.com. Please visit webinars.ishn.com for the archive of this presentation, as well as information about our upcoming events. We appreciate your time and hope you have found this webinar to be a valuable experience.